Hello, I'm Professor Rad, and today we're going to talk about absolute value. So let's start out by defining what we mean when we say that. So the absolute value of a number is the amount part of a number without the sign. So we've been using absolute values without knowing that that's what they were called. So before we learned about signed numbers, we were just using the absolute values of those signed numbers and adding them together, basically getting positive things, or zero. Effectively, if you're asked to find the absolute value of a number, basically you just make it positive. So if it's a positive, nothing changes. And if it's a negative, it just becomes positive. The symbols that we use to represent absolute value are two vertical lines. These are different from parentheses or brackets that we saw when we used to group operations. So if you just see two perfectly straight vertical lines, that means you're looking at the absolute value. So for example, this notation would be called the absolute value of -2. And what it does is it takes away the negative sign. So the absolute value of -2 is 2. This notation, where we have a decimal inside, is read as the absolute value of 16 3/10. And since 16 3/10 is already positive, it doesn't change the number, it just stays the same. So let's do a few examples of determining the absolute value of a bunch of different numbers. So for example A, we have the absolute value of 10. Since 10 is already positive, nothing changes, and we just get 10. For part B, be careful, this isn't LOL, it's not laughing at us. This is the absolute value of 0. Now 0 is like this weird number because 0 is neither positive nor negative, but also positive and negative. Like 0 is kind of like home base. It doesn't really have a direction to it inherently. So if we remove the direction, it doesn't change. Okay? It stays 0. For part C, we now have a decimal, 5 71/100. Since it's positive, nothing changes. So far, this is pretty boring. We're just rewriting a bunch of numbers, just without those lines. Part D, we have the absolute value of -6. So here we get to do something finally. So -6, we want to remove that direction and just write it as 6. The absolute value of -15/100, we're going to get rid of that negative sign and make it just 0.15. So all we're doing, you can think of it as making the numbers positive. So -15, when you take its absolute value, you get positive 15. If you have the absolute value of positive 8 7/10, here they're like aggressively asserting this is a positive number. So we're just going to take away that sign, but it's still going to be 8.7. We just won't have the positive sign there. All right, so I have a few problems here for you to try. Find the absolute value of each of these numbers here. And that's going to wrap it up for this video on absolute value. In the next video, we're going to start in on the next chapter where we will discuss number lines. So number lines are a way of visualizing these numbers and amounts. So looking forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a magnificent day.